This story makes me sick. It makes me sick for multiple reasons. But I'm just going to talk about the on the field issue first. The Browns, in my opinion, and I've said this, and this may be disrespectful to Todd Monken and Josh. I know you hope I'm wrong, and please tell me I'm wrong. I think Todd Monken is going to become the Browns version of what David Culley was for the Houston Texans. He is a figurehead. He is there for 1 year. The Browns are going to tank. They clearly do not have any belief in Deshaun Watson or Shedeur Sanders, in my opinion, because this is all rhetoric because the Browns want to lose every game they possibly can because Jimmy Haslam wants to select Arch Manning with the number 1 pick in the 2027 NFL Draft. And that's fully what I believe.
The fact that Haslam is even saying this is utterly ridiculous. You know, he hasn't played well since we basically gave the Houston Texans their current team with that trade. Houston has won that trade with us hand over fist. It's not even close. The Texans absolutely fleeced us.
Josh, I think your microphone cut off. I can't hear you anymore. I just hear a ringing sound. Yeah, no, I can't hear you. A little bit. I can hear your mic starting to come through.
Is that better now?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So respectfully, I'm not going to call him by his actual name. I'm just going to call him number 4. Because of all his off the field issues, I will not call him by his actual name. He is number 4 to me. When he was in Houston, we thought, oh, it's going to be him and Patrick Mahomes. We thought it's going to be the two of them battling for AFC supremacy. And since he's come to Cleveland, that hasn't been the case. He hasn't been able to stay on the field. And when he's been on the field, he hasn't looked good. He's had 2 major injuries. And I don't know how he's supposed to come back and look like a good quarterback. I don't.
I don't know how you're supposed to evaluate, because if this is truly an evaluation of Shedeur Sanders, how are you going to evaluate him with a new coach if he's the backup quarterback taking backup reps?
I don't know.
That's my argument. If the Browns want to be bad, like you know how I felt. I would have traded Myles Garrett a couple off seasons ago. I would have ate the dead cap hit with Deshaun Watson, as you call him, number 4. I don't care what the money was. I want to tank. I want to be bad. I'll figure it out later. Clearly, the Browns have said, we made our investment in this. We're gonna lie in our bed. And I do think, to defend the former head coach of the Browns, Kevin Stefanski, a little bit, if Deshaun Watson was really Stefanski's choice at quarterback and Stefanski was the one driving the bus, Deshaun would have been out of here once they fired Stefanski. So I do think on that front, it confirms that I believe Andrew Berry is the one that did go after Deshaun Watson. And the interesting part is, I know you and I both believe Jimmy Haslam is the one that went after Shedeur Sanders. And I do believe that Jimmy only made the call on Todd Monken. So who's going to win out here?
Yeah, the Browns are a pathetic franchise. They are. I'm not expecting them to do well this season. You know, we play the AFC South. We play the NFC South. At best, and maybe I'm being generous, at best, I'm expecting them to go 5-12.
See, I actually think that this is my take. I think they're probably going to go 1-16. But the schedule says that they could win 6 or 7 games. The problem is, I don't think they want to.
The Browns are an absolute dumpster fire.
All right, well, speaking of what is always seemingly a dumpster fire in the media, last year we saw Micah Parsons and a contract dispute with Jerry Jones, and he ended up getting traded to the Green Bay Packers for 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark. George Pickens this offseason has gotten franchise tagged. Jerry Jones has repeatedly said he wants George Pickens to be a Cowboy, but that they can't pay Dak and CD and Pickens and some of the other guys they did want to pay. So is the George Pickens drama going to play out, Josh, the same way it did with Micah Parsons?
And to add more fuel to the fire, I'm pretty sure George Pickens' agent is the same agent Micah Parsons has, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, you are
David
correct.
Malagata, I believe is his name. So you have to negotiate with him again, Jerry. No, but it's ironic we're doing these 2 stories back to back because, as I have said, Jimmy Haslam is our version of Jerry Jones. The only difference is Jimmy doesn't get in front of the camera and get on the microphone the same way Jerry does. That is literally the only difference between the 2 of them. But
so, I think you look at the NFL nowadays, and most of the good teams, not Buffalo is a good example of not having one, but most of the good teams have not 1 receiver, but 2 receivers. And guess what? They draft their defense, they keep them young, and then they either trade some defensive pieces like the Chiefs have, or they pay some of their defensive players and they maybe move on and draft other positions. It is feasible to keep Dak, George Pickens, and CD Lamb all happy in the roster. It's if you hit on your other draft picks, which is what the Cowboys have not done, which is what the Eagles have done, which is why my team has a Super Bowl in this time period and the Cowboys do not. And it's as simple as that.
Well, here's something else. Because you're talking about paying the quarterback and paying the 2 receivers. Well, the Cincinnati Bengals have done that, and it hasn't exactly worked out well for them. Now has
because they haven't hit their defensive draft picks. And I mean, they're paying Burrow, they're paying Chase, they're paying Higgins. But again, why do the Eagles pay Jalen Hurts? They pay A.J. Brown for right now. They pay Devontae Smith. They pay Saquon Barkley. They pay Wayne Johnson. Well, guess what? They just paid Jordan Davis. They still got Jalen Carter, Cooper DeJean, and Quinyon Mitchell. I know they're all rookies, and they're on rookie contracts, but that's the point. They hit on all those picks. And by the way, Cooper DeJean was a 2nd-round pick, and Quinyon Mitchell was a late 1st-round pick, and Jalen Carter was a top 10 pick, but he wasn't, and Jordan Davis was a top 13-ish pick. So it wasn't like these guys were top 5 draft picks. It's right where the Cowboys are picking every year, 12 or 13.
And think about like the 2013 Seattle Seahawks. You know, Russell Wilson, I think, was a 2nd-round pick.
Yep, he was. But the difference with that is, so they didn't have to pay Russ, but Richard Sherman was a 5th-round pick. You know,
exactly.
A lot of those secondary guys, peak arrow developed and drafted, come from USC because he knew college football. He knew back then, I think it was still the Pac-12. It might have been the Pac-10. But he knew a lot of that because he coached in it.
Exactly. So, like,
I mean, look at the Chargers, right? They've been in on draft picks because Jim Harbaugh has been in the Big Ten. He knows college football. Now, that hasn't won any playoff success, but every year, you know what everybody says? You know, it's a top 5 roster in the NFL, and they're paying Justin Herbert, the Chargers.
Yeah, and you talked about your Eagles. Why are they so successful on defense? It's because they get guys from the SEC, primarily Georgia.
Yeah. Georgia and Alabama, baby. That's why I watch SEC football, because I want to see what future bird we're going to draft.
It's why Baltimore is usually a perennial power, because they go and get like a Marlon Humphrey. They go and get Kyle Hamilton.
How many defensive guys in the Steelers draft? They're just Pro Bowl after Pro Bowl after Pro Bowl.
Exactly.
The Rams. Why have the Rams been so successful? Because they've hit on late. The Rams have made 1 first-round pick in like the last 10 years. They've been to multiple NFC championship games and they won a Super Bowl because they draft guys late. Puka Nacua was a 5th-round pick.
I will say this. Their 1 first-round pick looks like a definitive hit. Jared Verse has just exploded onto the scene.
So, Jerry, make your draft picks. Draft guys on defense. If I'm Dallas, I take both of my first round picks this year and I go defense, whether it's secondary or defensive line. Pay George Pickens. You can't afford George Pickens. Now, I would argue you couldn't afford Dak, Micah, CD, and George Pickens. So they made the decision to move Micah. But now that you have George Pickens, you can't move up both Micah and George Pickens. I know you only gave up a third round pick for George Pickens, but if you give up that capital for 1 year of him, it does feel like a waste.
It really does, because when CD went down, Dallas was still effective on offense.
Oh, George Pickens was incredible. He went back to his old steel. Remember the couple games he had like 10 catches?
That's exactly you're making my point there, because when CD went down, we didn't say the Cowboys were irrelevant. We said, okay, they can still hang around. And a big part of that was because what we saw from Dak and George Pickens.
I kind of feel this way for the Cowboys, but it's like this year, they're either going to win 9 or 10 games or the dam's going to break and they're going to win 4 or 5. Kind of what we thought last year. I am leaning more towards the latter because all of a sudden the NFC East is not no cakewalk anymore, especially if Jaden Daniels is healthy. And what we think of John Harbaugh and Jackson Dart, the Giants are no bottom dwellers either. And of course, my Eagles are going to be right there in contention again.
Yeah. I don't fully trust Washington, though.
That's interesting because I think they could be right. I'm scared of Washington. If they have a good draft and it's all about Jaden Daniels' health, though. I will say that.
Haven't we seen Washington with a second round pick and him unable to stay healthy, though?
Yeah, but that was under old ownership.
Yeah, but we saw what happened with Jaden last year.
Fair enough. Speaking of quarterbacks, you mentioned this right before we got on the show because this was interesting today. Former Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia, very popular left-handed quarterback, is being
Heisman Trophy runner-up.
Is being worked out by the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, I think this is fascinating because they just selected Bryce Young with the number 1 overall pick a few years ago. They won the division, took the Rams right down to the wire in the wild card round, and now you're bringing in Diego Pavia, who was a key part of Vanderbilt's turnaround last year, or really the last 2 years. To me, that raises an eyebrow about Bryce Young. How confident are they in Bryce?
See, I'll answer it both ways because I think both things are true. First of all, I don't think Diego Pavia is going to be drafted until day 3. And I think that if you take a quarterback on day 3, you're taking him for development anyway. So I don't think this would hurt. I mean, how many times did my Eagles do that with a quarterback? How many times has New England did it when they had Brady? They take a developmental guy in the 4th or 5th round. I don't really care what the name says in the back of the jersey. We've seen so many great guys in college, Heisman Trophy winners, go to the NFL and fail massively. But I also think the issue is for Carolina. And listen, I agree with you. I tried to defend Bryce Young when Dave Canales got there. Remember the first year Dave Canales was there and Bryce Young got benched for Andy Dalton, and it was like, he's so bad he can't even see over his offensive line. He can't complete any passes. He's gone a long way, but I do think Carolina is looking at it like, if I have to commit $50 million to Bryce Young, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And that's what the market's going to say to do at the end of this season.
It depends on how he plays and what the Panthers do. I'm curious to see if at some point in the draft, probably not in the first round, but if in round 2 or round 3, if Carolina goes with a running back, since they just lost Rico Dowdle.
Yeah, no, I think you can make a case for that. Obviously, they have the receivers. They have their defensive line now with Jalen Phillips and Derek Brown. They need secondary help, but I think the biggest weakness on their roster right now outside of Chuba Hubbard is running back.
So I think the Panthers are going to be a team to watch in the draft for sure. But no, I think this story is fascinating, and I'm surprised it's not being talked about more. The fact that Carolina is looking at a potential or a Heisman Trophy finalist at quarterback. Like I said, he was one of the key pieces in Vanderbilt's turnaround.
Well, many people don't think he's going to be a great NFL quarterback.
Whether that turns out to be true or not remains to be seen, obviously. But nonetheless, I think this is a major story for the draft. I really do.
Yeah, of course, the draft's going to be in 2 weeks. We're going to break it all down here in a couple weeks on Championship Rings. Me, Josh, and our other two Voted Select colleagues, Christian and Deshaun Fitzgerald, are working on an NFL mock draft right now. We all got 8 picks apiece. That will be up to Tuesday before draft day. And I've said before, speaking of the draft, just real quickly, I don't think you're going to see a lot of movement in this draft. I think it's going to be a lot of maybe second guessing on sort of who picks who, right? Like I think there's going to be a lot of discussion on this guy was supposed to go higher, maybe he drops, or this guy was supposed to go lower, and this team had him graded higher. Because there's a lot of very similar, interesting players, especially at the top. The edge rushers out of Miami, and then you got the 3 defensive guys out of Ohio State. But I don't think there's going to be a very fanatic trade up, trade down draft.
We'll see. I don't think anybody's going to trade up for Ty Simpson, the quarterback out of Alabama.
I mean, here's the one thing. I don't buy this report that the Jets are going to take him at 16. I don't see it. I don't think the Jets are going to take a quarterback this draft. I think they're going to roll with, as Aaron Glenn calls him, our savior, Geno Smith, and win about 2 games and try to get Arch Manning.
Yeah. But I do, like I said, I think the Panthers are one of the teams to watch in this draft. I think the Titans are another team to watch in the NFL draft. A lot of the mock drafts I've seen have them taking Jeremiah Love at number 4 overall, the running back out of Notre Dame. In our mock draft, I do not have them selecting Jeremiah Love. I have them selecting David Bailey out of Texas Tech because Robert Saleh is a defensive coach. He was the defensive coordinator in San Francisco. And who did he have at linebacker? Fred Warner. And with the high power caliber offenses you're going to face in the AFC, you need a strong defense. And I think linebacker is one of the key positions on defense. So if you can go get somebody like David Bailey, I'm not saying he's going to turn into Fred Warner necessarily, but if you can get somebody of his caliber to play in that linebacker position, I think that would help the Titans massively.
See, Josh, I actually think the most interesting team in this round, I'm not just saying it because I'm a fan, but I think it's the Eagles for 2 reasons. One is, if they take a wide receiver in the first round, what is that signal? We all know the answer to that. So it's very interesting from my perspective what they do in the first round of the draft. And the other thing is, in the second or third round, like if Ty Simpson is still there, we know there's reports right now out about Jalen Hurts and how the organization feels about him. I expressed my admiration for that to be BS report on Championship Rings last week with Sean Fitzgerald. But they could theoretically pull another Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts if they take another quarterback in the second or third round. So I think my team is fascinating to see what we're going to do in the draft.
I think the Saints could be another interesting team. I do think they will go defense with the 9th pick. I think they it wouldn't surprise me if they go Ruben Bain out of Miami. What, am I putting you to sleep over there?
No, I've had a long day.
Okay. But I also think they need running back help, and I think they need some wide receiver depth.
Wait, are we sure they need running back help? They have Kamara and ETN now.
Well, like Kamara's getting up there.
Well, he could be used as trade bait, but we don't know that yet.
Yeah, but we've seen it's good to have two running backs.
They have two right now. That's my point. So once they trade Kamara, I don't think they're taking a running back.
You never know. But I also, because Olave is good, but I don't think he's enough on the wide receiver side.
I agree with that. They definitely need to take a receiver.
Especially because they traded Rashid Shaheed.
So another interesting story, real quick. We won't spend a lot of time on this one, but in 2027, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be playing their home games in Orlando, Florida, the home of the Camping World Stadium, which has hosted 2 WrestleManias in the past, and one of the homes, I believe, potentially of the UFL team right now.
I believe you're right. So they will be playing in their regular stadium in this season, but with a reduced capacity. And that is because the Jaguars are doing a massive construction project to their current stadium. It's going to be called like the Stadium of the Future. They're putting a like futuristic dome on their stadium. So the Florida-Georgia game is not going to be played there in 2026 or 2027. But, you know, it's interesting. Like, the A's are kind of in the same situation where they're playing in a temporary home. Granted, the A's are in the process of relocating. I don't think the Jaguars are going to relocate. But, you know, I just think it's interesting that they're going to be moving up to Orlando. Like, what if Orlando shows they are a strong NFL city? Could they possibly get an expansion team in the future?
I don't think the NFL should expand anymore. I think 32 teams is enough. I think we go any more, you're opening up a can of worms. I think all sports leagues should have 32 teams, and that should be capped. Like, if we want to move a team to Orlando, we can have that discussion, but that's a lot of teams. And there's some good players in the UFL that should be on NFL rosters. Don't get me wrong, the UFL has been entertaining to watch, but there's not enough to fill another 2 full rosters of NFL guys.
But what are your thoughts on the Jaguars playing their home games in Orlando?
I mean, I think Orlando's a better football market than Jacksonville.
Okay.
I will say that. I don't know how many Jaguars fans are going to want to travel up to Orlando. I don't know how far away Orlando is from Jacksonville. I think it's a couple hours. So I actually think the Jaguars make it a good crowd, but I don't think it's a massive story because I think Jacksonville is going to be staying there, and I don't think Orlando is going to be getting a football team.
And we know Jacksonville is going to be playing 2 games over in London anyway.
Yeah.
By the way, I've started putting out my schedule predictions for the Browns. We play the Jaguars this season. I haven't revealed when I have the Browns playing them because I only did weeks 1 to 4 so far. But I will say this. Since the Browns play the Jaguars and the Buccaneers both on the road, I have that being a back-to-back. So, like, I have them starting at Jacksonville and then the following week playing at Tampa Bay. I have them doing the same.
There's a lot of rumors that the Jaguars game could be a London game.
I hope not. The Browns just played in London last year.
Well, we know the NFL is expanding. They have 9 international games, and eventually they're going to want all 16 teams to win an international game every year.
Yep. They are going – it's inevitable. We're going to go to 18 games.
Yep. Now, the interesting thing is we actually talked about this a little bit when you were on vacation with Jalen. I'll ask you this real quick. Did you see the proposal that I think it was Mike Florio who said it, that said they should go to 18 games, but you should only have the players play 17
So who would play the 18th game?
backups.
Oh,
Meaning, like, if you're the Rams and you have the Jets on your schedule, is that the week you rest Matthew Stafford? Because you think you can beat the Jets without him?
yeah.
No,
I guess.
the fantasy implications of that would be wild, and I don't think they should do it. But they said it's a workaround, a way for the union to get to 18 games without them playing 18 games, because the concern is safety for 18 games, which I think is BS, to be honest with you, because I think preseason games are more hurtful than regular season games. I don't think we'd get way more injuries if we increased it by one game, but I'm not a medical scientist. But I do think if you reduce the season from 17-3 to 18-2, I'm just not a fan of I'm not a fan of 17 games. I thought they should have went to 18 when they expanded from 16. I love the 16 game schedule. I didn't think they needed 18, but since you went to 17, I thought you might as well go to 18.
I mean, for God's sakes, they might go to 20 games eventually.
No, I mean, way too much. Way too much on the body. You got to have some sort of body recovery time. You can't play football for 7 months straight.
With the way the NFL is, I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me